Well, I'm sorry I cannot be there with you. Thank you for inviting me to this meeting. I'm actually at Columbia um, teaching in the middle of our semester. And my approach has to do a little bit with my personal history. I was trained in medicine, and I wanted to help patients that have brain diseases, either neurological or mental diseases, psychiatry diseases. And I very quickly found out as a doctor that you cannot really treat the disease until you understand how the organ works. So I decided to go into basic neuroscience to try to understand how the brain works, so that we can actually approach these patients and really help them. And that led me to the fundamental problem is that we don't understand how the brain works because we don't have technology to measure the activity of the brain or to change or manipulate the activity of the brain. And this is what Ricardo has talked about: neurotechnology, methods to measure and change brain activity. So I became, for the last 30 years, specialized in developing such methods. And some of the most powerful methods are optical methods that use lasers to either measure the activity of circuits of neurons in the brain of animals, or to manipulate them with exquisite detail. And we perform such experiments. This is what we call a piano experiment, and this is with experimental animals, with mice. And the experiment that happened about 10 years ago, when we were able to measure the activity of the visual part of the brain of a mouse and decode what the mouse was looking at, okay? And then in the second part of the experiment, we were able to manipulate the activity of the visual part of the brain of the mouse and make the mouse think that it was seeing something that was not there. And we essentially introduce a hallucination, a visual hallucination in the brain of the mouse, and we were able to take control of the behavior of the mouse as if it were a puppet, and making the mouse do one thing or the other thing when we went in with our lasers and putting one image or another image into its brain. And that for us was a breakthrough, both scientifically, because that essentially lets us get into the code, the internal code that the brain is using. So we were able to actually decode and manipulate the internal language of the brain. And it was also a breakthrough for the clinic, no? Because as you know, one of the major brain diseases is schizophrenia. And the positive symptoms of schizophrenics are characterized by hallucinations. And this is a way in which we can actually generate a hallucination in an experimental animal and understand what is a hallucination so that we can control it and help the patients. So this is all good. But that night, I did not sleep. I had what I call my Oppenheimer moment. For those of you who've seen the Oppenheimer movie, when they turn on he turns on the nuclear reactor, and then he suddenly sees what he has unleashed in the future of humanity. And that night I didn't sleep because I realized that all these methods that we have developed with our own hands, what you could do in a mouse today, you can do in a human tomorrow. It was a question of time, not of possibilities. No? And together with some colleagues that were very worried about this, we actually put together a meeting in 2017 here at Columbia in the Morningside campus. And we call ourselves the Morningside Meeting. And that meeting had 25 experts representing the brain initiatives of the US, Europe, China, Japan, South Korea, Australia, Canada, and Israel. And also experts coming not just from the clinic and the laboratories, but also from AI, from Silicon Valley, because very quickly we realized that you can combine neurotechnology with AI. And as an example of this, I can tell you the breakthrough that was performed 3 years ago by our colleagues at UCSF, led by Eric Chang, that use a combination of electrical neurotechnology and generative AI to decode the mental speech of a patient that was paralyzed. And just like myself, Eddie had a Oppenheimer moment, and he called me up in the middle of the night and said, Rafa, I cannot sleep because not only can we decode the person's speech, we can also decode her emotions and even her facial gestures. So they built an avatar of the person in the computer using a combination of neurotechnology and AI. So this pioneering work of UCSF was then carried over very quickly to non-invasive neurotechnology that is sold commercially. And 2 years ago, a team in Australia was able to use a portable EEG device that you can buy in Amazon and combined with generative AI, decode the words that the person, a volunteer, was conjuring in his head. And just last year, a team from Meta working in France developed an even more sophisticated algorithm using neurotechnology and AI to decode the inner speech of volunteers using electroencephalography helmets. So our Morning Side group looked at all these things and came to the conclusion that we're dealing with a human rights problem. The brain is not just another organ of the body, it's the organ that generates all the cognitive and mental activities of humans. So it defines what is a human, who we are. We are our brains. And by definition, if you have methods, technology that let you measure brain activity and change brain activity, by the same token, these methods will enable you to measure and decode mental activity and to manipulate mental activity. So our proposal was the concept of neural rights as a set of human rights protection on 5 areas. The first one is mental privacy, to ensure that the content of our mind cannot be decoded without consent. The second one is mental integrity, to ensure that our personality and our own self cannot be changed from the outside with neurotechnology. The third one is our agency, our freedom of will, freedom enabled to, so that our decision-making remains a property of ourselves and is not interfered with from the outside. Our fourth neural right is the equal right to mental augmentation. As Ricardo has mentioned, this is something that will happen, and we have to ensure that this technology is spread out equally under the universal principle of justice. And the fifth and final neural right is the protection from bias in the information that new technology can put into the brain. From these 5 neural rights, 5 areas of concern, we think that mental privacy is the most urgent one because these devices are starting to be sold with generative AI. As I'm telling you, they can be used to decode internal language of people, which is very related to their internal thought process. And to make things even worse, we've studied the consumer user agreements of 30 major neurotechnology companies around the world. And 30 out of the 30 companies, when the consumer turns on the device, they take possession of all the brain data. And most of the companies also allow themselves to sell the brain data to a third party. We think this is not okay. And together with different governments and parliaments around the world, we've worked to implement governance to protect brain activity from the ill-intended uses of neurotechnology. We think neurotechnology is good and it has a wonderful future in the clinic and in research and maybe in the market, but it has to be used within these human rights bounds. And just to finish, I'll tell you that I have good news to share with you. There are 6 places in the world today where neurotechnology has been regulated by law and brain data is actually protected legally. The first was the Republic of Chile in 2021, where there was a unanimous approval of a constitutional amendment to Article 19 of the Chilean Constitution that protects brain activity and brain data. And this led to the first jurisprudence case 2 years ago in Chile, where a citizen sued an American neurotechnology company, and that went all the way up to the Supreme Court of Chile, who ruled unanimously in favor of the citizen and forced the company to erase all the data it had acquired from this person. Following Chile, there was a similar constitutional amendment also approved unanimously in the state of Rio Grande do Sul in Brazil. And in the US, in the last year and a half, we've supported and implemented bills, legal protection for neural data in Colorado, California, Montana, and Connecticut. So this is starting to happen. It's not crazy to think that countries and states can actually control and regulate this very powerful technology. And I just today got my books that I have to teach next year to the undergrads at Columbia, and they gave me the ethics of Aristotle. And at the beginning of Aristotle's ethics, he talks about the common good, the fact that everything we do as humans should be driven by common good. And this is something that even though we're scientists, we want to make sure that the technology that we've developed with our own hands contributes to the betterment good of humanity. Thank you.